Hello, me old mates. How are you doing? Well, this is a new pipe, Captain Scott, and I bought it from PPM, and a lot of links below on this video because I take the occasion smoking the first time Captain Scott to talk about the Terra Nova expedition. 1910 it started the funding, and the tragic end of this expedition that you all know about. Housekeeping, you've seen the pipe, and of course with the British history, a Dunhill lighter, and I tried to find the oldest tobacco that was actually available to the Navy, Army, and 1910, and unfortunately Royal Yacht was launched by Alfred Dunhill in 1912 after the tragic end of the expedition, but I found references about W.H. Wills, capstan that existed at that time, 1910, and it's original Navy cut. This is the rubbed out one, but apparently the Wills Company were actually established supplying tobacco to the armed forces, and I'm pretty sure they would actually, the Navy, supply also tobacco. So there's a reasonable chance that Captain Scott and his men got their ration of tobacco. Maybe it was capstan. It's a very suitable one because usually the armed forces get medium to strong nicotine because they use tobacco to keep awake, so I think this is a good choice, and I've smoked actually a couple of bowls, and I was very surprised that I liked it very much. It's pure Virginia with a casing of, sweet casing or very light topping, but it's really good smoke and not too strong for me. It's about medium for me, I think. So I was very pleased to actually get a tin of this, and maybe I'll get more. So I made a clip of the about the pipe. It's a beautiful pipe, and I was very pleased for $60, to get that delivered with shipping. And there's no history about where it came apart from made in France, Anyway, here's the clip. Made in France, as you see here. Made in France. And Captain Scott. I think it was made in St. Claude, but there's no other markings, and I like a panel pipe, and this is octanol, and I love the stain, it's reddish brown. Very nice. Inexpensive pipe, about 50 roughly, you know, with a bit of shipping. Medium bowl of 19mm here. Nice brass band here, and 9mm, and very well drilled. Let's see if we can get it. I think you see it, you know, it's pretty well drilled in the center, and the bottom of the bowl perfect. And it was unsmoked, listed unsmoked, and I think that was really lovely buy, you know. I'm amazed actually Mike has so lovely estate pipes, and a great deal, I think, and it's a sitter as well, of course. The tamper today is this Larry Blackett, the favourite, you know, but it looks like a ski pole, and that's appropriate for this video. I can't resist to revisit the history of the Antarctic expedition. So there'll be a lot of photos here, and there will be a lot of links below, other documentaries, because you know, in 15 minutes I can't cover enough, but you'll find, for example, the film of John Mills, 1948. I found a free copy in archive.org, and it's a fantastic film. It's 95% accurate, just some details, but not important details. And the music is Vaughan Williams' Symphonie Antarctica. Yeah, perfect music for this video, and also the original film 1948. Anyway, let's start. So Scott tried already in 1903 to get the South Pole with Shackleton. Ernest Shackleton was with him, and they had to turn back, but that was good experience. So the first thing I would say, in 1970 and 80s, there were a lot of disparaging, superficial documents and books against Scott, saying he was incompetent, or, you know, not a hero, and that's all rubbish. If you look in the links, there's Ranulph Fiennes, his documentary in YouTube. Watch that, and he knows what he's talking about, because he went the South Pole and he was the North Pole, and he climbed Everest as well, so he knows what he's talking about. And it was, you know, no doubt that Captain Scott was a hero and exemplary Englishman, and with his team around him, comrades, also excellent men. So he raised the funds, and a lot of scientific institutions as well, the Admiralty, gave him money. So his mission was actually scientific as well, to go to the South Pole. And you know about the race from Amundsen, and he actually got the South Pole about 33 days before Scott. And no disrespect to Amundsen, he was a brilliant, tough of nails, man and used the experience and his instincts to plan this mission. And he initially wanted to go to the North Pole, but already at that time there were claims from Peary and another American that said we actually got to the North Pole, so he abandoned that idea and decided to go to the South Pole. And he planned for just that, to go to the South Pole and back as fast as he can, with dogs and dogs and dogs, and a team of very skilled skiers, and you know, that was brilliant. And hat off to Amundsen. You know, I really admire him, and he did a lot of other fantastic things, and Norway could be proud of him. But Scott was burdened with this scientific structure, with a lot of men who were actually scientists and not skiers or not explorers. Some of them had experience and some not, so he had to actually he was forced to go actually slower and collect fossils and things like that. And actually the scientific information that Scott collected was, till this day, it's used, the measurements for weather and air pressure, and all the specimens that they collect was actually profound. So you could say that that's a bad start to go the South Pole, but his biggest enemy was the unexpected, and till this day that's the bane of a pioneer, isn't it? You know, you go there, it's practically unexplored, and you meet problems that were not expected. He took machines, and of course they broke down because the low temperatures, nobody realized that actually the metal structures change, and a lot of the metal becomes brittle, and for example the gasoline tins leaked because they're actually, the crimp around the bottom was changing, and they would get it brittle, and he lost fuel, and nobody at that time had the science to warn him or give him another container. You know, if he'd used maybe glass, maybe it would work, but you're talking about -30 to -60 centigrade. I mean, terrible temperatures, which all kinds of things change. For example, the structure of the crystals of snow, when it's really low, the temperature, they change in their structure, and actually if you're sledding or skiing, it's like on sand, not in snow, because the pressure doesn't actually melt the snow, and you can't actually glide, and all kinds of things that were very unfortunate. So he started off, and he put dumps, of course, on the way, a lot of dumps, and for food and fuel and things like that. Also the return journey, that they could replenish their food and fuel and things like that. And he was a good planner. He was a very thorough planner, and he had experience in the Navy and also the last expedition. So I think it's a lot of people said he made mistakes, but no, I don't think that under the circumstances, a scientific expedition, he did 98% right, but he could not predict what was going to happen. We have to also realize it was 900 miles, 900 nautical miles for the Evans Bay where the hut was placed, and it will take months. And think about those weather conditions, pulling sleds and the journey over, you think, okay, a couple of weeks, but so like 3 months or longer, your body is drained of energy and reserves of fat and vitamins and the cold down there. So he reached the point where also a section of his men, 18 men, were sent back, and they're not necessary, and finally he took 5 people to the South Pole, and the rest go back. And he didn't know where Amundsen was, so he thought, we'll give it a go, and try to get it. Maybe a small criticism that 4 men would be better in the tent, because the capacity of the tent was more for 4 people, and also cooking 4 men is quicker, and it's still not unclear why he took 5 men. Bowers was the youngest man, 28, and very strong, so he probably thought, if we lose a man, we'll have a strong guy to help us there and get back, perhaps. So 17th January 1912, Scott arrived, already exhausted and cold, and you see at the thumbnail they're all pretty tired and not really smiling. Okay, Amundsen was there and the Norwegian flag, but I think the journey there exhausted them quite. So they headed back, and a trick with a sail on the sledge always helped them, but this time the wind was not existing and it didn't help them, and part of the journey to the Ross ice shelf, the temperatures started go down very far. Now Scott planned the journey with weather forecasts and one of his colleagues, and he was actually an expert, and years after they said, well, actually he was right. This particular winter, or it was still summer, autumn in the pole when he was going back, he wanted to beat the winter, But they said this was very extraordinary. On the Ross Shelf, it was almost the lowest temperatures ever recorded to this day. So that was the unexpected. And as I said, the snow get like grainy and was like sand, and they were man-hauling the sledge because they had no more dogs and no more ponies. Anyone who has frostbite, you know, you can't just put iodine or whip it, the circulation back, and you have to amputate. And Wilson was a doctor, actually. He was my college in Cambridge, Gonville and Keys, and he was a doctor. But of course, he only, in 1910, he had rudiment doctor's bag, and so when the men actually have frostbite, there's not a lot you could do. And the problem is that this journey was over months. So Evans was the first to die, and he had an injury. I've read several documentaries about what was the injury. He actually fell in a crevasse on a head injury, and he never really recovered. He lost a bit of his sanity, and he collapsed, and Wilson wrote in his diary it was brain damage. But of course he was also suffering frostbite as well, and as you know, gangrene is a consequence if you don't do anything but frostbite. Your limbs and fingers go black, you get gangrene in your blood. They pressed on, and there were 4 of them, and Captain Oates, Titus Oates, a strong man as well. They were all fit and strong and tough as nails, but after frostbite he realized he was the slowest, and he was slowing them down, and he decided to go out of the tent and said, I'll be a whale, so don't look for me. And they probably realized he was sacrificing himself, the food ration, and he realized he probably, the next march, he couldn't walk. It's an incredible story of sacrifice and camaraderie with these men, and they made 2 more short marches, and here's the killer. Here's what killed everyone: the blizzard. And usually a blizzard in the Antarctica, they said, there's a couple of 3 days and they passed. This one was at least 7 days, maybe 10 days. That's disputed, but it was a long blizzard, and they couldn't do the last leg. And the last leg to 1 ton dump a lot of fuel and food, everyone they needed. 11 miles. 11 miles. But in a blizzard you can't orientate where you're going, and it's fatal. You know, you have 360 degrees and if you get it a tenth of a degree in the direction wrong, you will not see where the dump is. Fortunately, they died in March 29th of 1912. And about 6 months later, after the Arctic, Antarctic winter, they had to wait before they searched them, and 6 months later, Tom Crean is a great explorer as well, and he was not of the 5 last men, but he was on the search party, and he found the tent, just a bump covered with snow, but he knew that was probably the tent, and they found the men. They recovered the diaries and some of the scientific documents. I only regret they actually left the bodies there and covered with snow, and built a cairn and a cross out of wooden skis. And there's probably good reasons for that, and those days it was a struggle to get there and get back with the search party also, and probably to excavate the hole and the bodies, and may have too difficult. And those bodies are probably 10 meters under the ice now, all those years. But I regret that they actually not returned to Britain. So was it Scott's fault? No. Amundsen had good weather and a good strategy, but he was not financed by scientific institutions. He was funded by the Norwegian government, and the job was get that and back, and he did a great job. But he had good weather. We know already today the weather is a killer, and you can't predict everything, and you can't prepare for everything. And he had the most unfortunate weather on going back. He would have made it without the blizzard. Maybe they would not walk ever again because of the frostbite, but he would have made it. So Scott, for me, is a hero, and I'm proud to smoke this pipe. It's probably not what Captain Scott smoked like here. It's like probably a Peterson army mount. But I'll remember Captain Scott when I smoke this pipe with Capstan. This occasion, I took my oldest whiskey. This is 40 years old, and here's a British shot glass, and here's to Captain Scott and his men who died.